Hello, friends. It's good to be together again. I've um, I've cut many videos in recent days of varying lengths. Some of them going into the deep weeds about things. Others very short by my lights, and yet all of them failed to either load or send. Um, and so I'm now down to something that I think now I gotta keep my eye on the clock. Um, going to just experiment. My only real purpose for this one is just to do something that's so short that perhaps I can establish some kind of baseline about how much time I really have or do not have, and then can just even determine whether it's possible. I keep getting this message that I have a very weak connection, or sometimes it will say you have an unstable connection here in my mother's home in mid-Michigan. So I'm just continuing to try to get something to you. So this is the week that we would normally be discussing the Baptists and separatism and socialism. And there is a sad irony in the fact that this became the week in which we were no longer gathering together, because it was always this week that I most looked forward to class and just walked into class knowing what would happen, that just immediately there would be a discussion about Nanny Burroughs, this brave and brilliant and blunt figure who just lights up every page for a section of this book, and who presents all manner of sort of issues about how to read anyone in their own historical and social context, and her relationship with Booker T. Washington, and just piecing out the fact that to her, just the highest compliment you could give her is the one that she got every week in being introduced as a female Booker T. Washington. Um, so just parsing out all of what goes with that, with what Higginbotham called the politics of respectability, and yet also the fact that she's mixed in with all that is all this protest activism that she does share with Du Bois, even though she's very critical of Du Bois. And so the discussion that goes from then to now, mediated by this extraordinary figure of Nanny Burroughs, is always sort of dominates this discussion, and it makes me sad that we couldn't have it together. It always moves quite naturally, as the text does, toward a kind of comparative discussion of Burroughs and Adam Clayton Powell Sr., since the two of them have a great deal in common, and he serves on her board of their trade school, and they served on some of the same committees of the NAACP. They're both bigwigs in the NAACP from the National Baptist Convention, and yet they come from polar ends of even the Black Social Gospel wing of the National Baptist Convention, because Powell, after flourishing in a ministry in New Haven and realizing he needs more of a challenge in his life, moves to New York, to Midtown, where Abyssinian was at that time, and eventually he drags it to Harlem. They didn't want to go to Harlem. Folks at Abyssinian are grieving over this massive debt that they took on moving from the village to Midtown. And he has to pretty much browbeat them and guilt trip them and try to inspire them, and finally just has to threaten to resign before he can drag them to Harlem, where this very unusual congregation built a spectacle building. I mean, Abyssinian is a marvel, and just the fact that he's preaching to a congregation that could build a church like that says a great deal about how different his group is, his group within the church and within the movement is from the women that Nanny Burroughs is speaking to and for through her career. So the back and forth about that normally take up the first hour and a half or so of our discussion, and then from there we always move to some discussion of George W. Woodbey, the socialist leader, a figure very much like Eugene Debs, in as much as the way he explicates race, and like Debs, does believe that socialism is the only solution for racism and sexism and imperialism. This is the sort of answer. This is my response in our back and forth in the Moodle forum to Kimberly's question, that Debs himself believed in this race-blind approach because he so deeply did believe that only socialism can abolish racism. He just felt that there is no reform movement and no combination of reform movements that can do much of anything to abolish racism as a site of oppression or misogyny or imperialism. Only socialism can do that, and therefore Debs just has no patience really with people who think we can just gather the reform movements, and he's very critical of people in his party who run for office and get elected as mayor or get elected to a state legislature, and a couple of them got elected to the Congress, and yet when they ran on their reform causes, and to Debs that was just a betrayal, beginning with perhaps the betrayal of the fact that these people don't really believe in socialism. That's how he thinks about it. And I'm going a little bit long on this part, even in this very truncated forum right now, in order to make the point that not only did Debs believe it, but Woodbey believed it. Woodbey is the type of socialist who believes that only socialism is saving, that only socialism can abolish these sites of oppression. And that is notwithstanding that Woodbey is in a black body and goes to conventions. Debs always skipped the conventions because he just couldn't bear them. But Woodbey would go to the conventions and talk about what race consciousness means in this context, and speak especially about open borders, about why it is that socialists have to be anti-imperialists and have to be just right down the line on all of what politically otherwise gets called social issues. So we have these three extraordinary characters in this chapter, and with my eye on the clock, I'm going to end right now just to see if a video this short can get through. So one way or another, I am going to get through. And I'm hoping that at least this one will establish some kind of a baseline of how short it needs to be for me to make it to be able to plant a video. So take care, friends. I miss you, and I look forward to talking with you and reading your comments and questions in the weeks to come. Take care.